is about the African American culture.
I felt like that homeschooling was the best way to educate my children.
Well, it's a way of protesting.
I like homeschooling better.
We come from...
This is a school you can mess up.
I want each of my students to believe that they can achieve their dream.
We come from different walks of life. But we started in Africa. Started in Africa. Started in Africa. Place African in America. African in Europe.
We're no longer looking to the public school for uplift for the culture, but the lesser known history is that we've always been self-taught, and it was our self-agency and our self-determination that got us to the point where we were seeking education as a way of freedom.
So let's have a serious talk right now. Let's talk about how the public school system is not for your child. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about all the stories, that have come out about that I've reported on and that other various media outlets have reported on that are basically showing proof of why you should take your kid out of public school. Because now public schools seem to be a place where their job is to demean you. Okay? How are you an honor roll student and they got the nerve to try to suspend you for a part in your hair? What part of the game is that? And what part of rewarding somebody for good behavior that there's no such thing anymore? I guess it seems it's like, if you are black, they're trying any and every way to literally suck the life out of you. And that means lower your confidence as soon as they can. 7 years old, great. I'm sorry we couldn't hit him at 5, right? And that's how they feel. They want to demean your kids for everything that they can to lower their confidence. So that eventually when they end up robbing somebody or joining a gang, then they'll get them in prison and get them, working for Whole Foods, making their bread. You know what I'm saying? Where they want them anyway. And again, these schools, they have all these rules and regulations for a reason. Those rules and regulations aren't educating your kids. They're keeping your kids from being creative. They're keeping your kids from being innovative. They're keeping your kids from being free. So they come to public school thinking, okay, I'm coming to school today. I should be able to express myself. I should be able to have fun. But no, really, they're walking into a pre-prison before they get to the real prison. And trust me when I say I know what I'm talking about. Okay? His mother said that he was teary-eyed because he doesn't want to be suspended for a part in his head. And she told him, don't hold your head down. Continue to make these A's and B's because that part is nothing. But you know what, Mama? You know what you need to do? You need to take your kid, Rashad, cute little Rashad. You need to take him out of public school. That's what you need to do. And I don't know what else has to happen to him or to other kids that you have to read about for you to finally do it. But you need to do it because slowly but surely the confidence will be sucked out of him because of all these little things that are going to add up that are going to happen to him, all because he's black. And that's the truth, okay? We all know in public school, a lot of the times, like I said, they just don't care. They don't care. And unfortunately, their job is really not to educate you anymore. It's to indoctrinate you. And, a lot of these public schools, they have interests in the private prisons. So they're directly doing certain things so that people can fall in line to go to prison. And if you don't know about the prison industrial complex, you need to Google that because that is real. That is alive and breathing right now, training people right now, getting them ready for prison life.
8-year-old Nissan Jones's favorite subject is art, but the 4th grader at West Middle Island Elementary School says while he was working on a self-portrait in art class on Monday, his teacher said something that made a very bad impression.
I didn't like how I drew my nose. And then I asked him, could you help me draw my nose? And then he drew my nose really big, and then I asked him, why'd you draw my nose really big? And then he said, because all African Americans have big noses.
Nassan says his art teacher, John Johnson, is white.
I was shocked.
Nassan's grandmother, Roberta Williams, says when he told her about the comment, she was outraged.
For it to be a white teacher, and my grandson's African American, and you told a kid that, okay, because of your color, you have a big nose. And I don't think that any child, regardless of what color they are, no teacher should be shaming a child about their color, the size of their nose, the texture of their hair, the color of their eyes. It shouldn't matter.
My mom and my grandma always talk about don't let anybody be racist.
Williams says when she called the school about the incident, the acting principal told her she talked to Johnson about it. Williams says Johnson called her yesterday, but she didn't get the apology she was hoping for.
He said, oh, I think your grandson misunderstood me, and no, I don't think he misunderstood you. Not at all.
The school superintendent issued a statement saying, quote, Longwood Central School District Central Administration is looking into the matter and trusts that any miscommunication or offense taken by the family from a staff member will be remedied through further communication.
We just want this teacher removed from the school. He shouldn't be teaching any kids.
Williams is demanding action because she says it's clear the incident has left a mark on her grandson.
I'm scared to go back to art class because I don't know what's going to happen.
In Middle Island, Virginia Huey, News 12, Long Island.
The district declined News 12's request to speak with that art teacher.
They told my son he can't come to school because he got hair. Wow. Can I braid it up? Can I braid it up? Is that okay?
I don't think so. Where's Mrs. Book has to give that? It's in our.
That's crazy, man.
It's in our handbook. It has to be above the ears.
That's crazy. Oh, be calm, be calm, be calm. Stay calm. Don't trip. Don't worry about it, son. Everybody's hair is at their shoulders. What's the difference?
That's just it.
That's your rule. I respect that, but that's just not right. It's not. It's not. It's not. It's not. It's not. It's not.
I can't change that rule.
I know.
I'm sorry.
I know, but something has to be done.
Yeah. Yeah, she called me and told me that she had an issue up here about my grandson being in a dress. I mean, I'm trying to see what the issue is about that.
Okay, you'll have to talk to Dara.
Who's
She's
Dara?
the director. She's down in the other classroom.
Is she the one that was in charge of the kids while my grandson?
I was, but I can't talk to you.
Why?
Because you're not on the form. So we'll have to get Dara up here and see if she will let me talk to you about it.
I mean, first of all, I'm coming down here because we don't do that. The transgender and all that. We don't do that.
I understand. I don't either.
And I don't appreciate you encouraging him to put on no dress for the second day too. I don't appreciate that. And don't think this is going away. I'm going further with this.
Okay, you can go down and talk.
No, I'm not done talking to you. I'm letting you know the next time that you put any kid in a dress, we're gonna make you go viral.
Okay, you need to go talk to my director because I, as a teacher.
No, I'm letting you know I got an issue with you about that. I'm not playing with you.
I'm sorry that you feel that way.
Yeah, I'm sorry that you feel that way. But you should have called me before you made the decision to put my grandson in a dress.
Okay, you can speak to the.
No, I'm speaking to you.
Please do not talk to me in that tone with my children.
I wouldn't be up here if you wouldn't have put my grandson in no dress.
Again.
Well, do what you got to do.
With Miss
No, I'm taking it up with you.
Please lower your voice. You're in a classroom.
I'm taking up with you. Well, you shouldn't have put my grandson in no dress.
He's 2.
This ain't over with, all right?
They're saying the hair is out of order. You're saying the hair is part of your religious and cultural beliefs. So explain more about that to us.
Basically, you know, where we come from, we as a people need to identify that. Now, for us as a family, I can only speak for my family. For us as a family, we are Hebrewites. It also goes in the category of Rastafaris.
Yes.
But the thing about it, people have a stigma about Rastas. Rastas, in people's eyes, is that they stay home, smoke weed, and, you know, the normal thing. But in my household, we don't touch the stuff.
Yes.
Is Rastafarian a religion or a culture?
It is both. It is both. You can put it in a religious form, because if you read the Bible, it also says that when the Lord came, his hair was like wool. It clearly says it in the Bible. In a culture where I come from, kids, this is how they wear their hair.
So, Mum, you will say, you know, I think the fear would be this is a fashion trend. And your point is absolutely not.
It's not a fashion trend.
So here's the problem. I think, you know, the school have their policy, and you can argue it one way or the other with you, but you can also argue surely the school, before they took Chickasee on board, they should have understood the child that they were accepting into the school, surely.
Or told you that their hair wasn't acceptable.
Yes.
Did you have any kind of conversation with them?
Not about my son's hair, because as far as I was concerned, it was not an issue. As far as, in my opinion, it wasn't an issue. I went to several occasions to different meetings in the school. Everything they send us to go to, I will go. I bring my son with me. I had a meeting, not a meeting as such, a conversation with the headmaster. He shook my hand, he shook Chickasee's hand, he said, welcome to Fulham Boys School. He said it'll be a pleasure.
Okay. So you say you had read the school rule book, and there was nothing in there. There were mention of they couldn't have hair beyond their collar, but Chickasee ties his hair up.
That's exactly.
So Chickasee, tell us your first day. This is Fulham Boys School in London. What happened on your first day then? Who first mentioned to you that your hair was not acceptable?
I was in class, and then my head of house came in, and then she asked me if I can come out of class for a second, and then she told me that by Monday my hair has to be cut.
So what did you feel at that point? What did you think about what she was saying to you?
Well, I was upset and I was a bit worried because I really wanted to go to that school.
So you love the school, you're a good student, you want to be at school. So when he came home...
Except you're now being treated differently, aren't you? You're being isolated, or what way are they treating you within school? Because they see every day you come in, looking the way you do, they see it as defiance and disobedience. So you're being punished for that, are you? What way are you being punished?
Well, on Monday, they took me out of class, and then they brought me into isolation.
When you say isolation, what do you mean? Where did they put you?
They brought me into the head of house office, and then they made us.
Okay, let me just explain the school's point of view on this one for people. The headmaster, Alan Ebenezer, says we're a strict academic boys' school with a very distinct ethos. We have a very strict uniform and appearance policy, which includes hair. Hair cannot be shorter than a number 2, longer than your collar, and must be one natural colour, no braids, no dreadlocks, and no cult hairstyles. We are treating this as a cultural issue at the moment and are surprised that the parents have not discussed this with us sooner and left it to the start of term. So I hear what Mr. Ebenezer is saying, but you're saying you met him or you met officials of the school before Chickasee was appointed. So he knew, or he should have raised that point with you then. We put it to you, headmaster, that you should have raised that then.
But also, you're saying it doesn't. He's mentioning dreadlocks there, but actually, in the written rule book, it doesn't say the word dreadlocks at all.
At all, because that's the thing about me. I'm a strict mom. Okay,
yes.
So before even he went into the school, 2 things he did. He spent an entire day in the school Nothing was mentioned to me. I sat down, downloaded it, the policy, read it through. I said, okay, fine. They said no twists.
How do you feel about him being isolated?
Yes, because it says, the headmaster was on to say that anyone who refuses to follow school policy faces exclusion. Boys from all cultures and backgrounds are welcome and feel part of the school. And if you don't adhere to the policy, there is no point in having a policy. So this could result on him being booted out of the school.
Yes.
So have you taken this further than the headmaster?
Well, I've written the headmaster. I followed their procedure again, that's on the website. I've written to the headmaster and he refused to write back to me.
So what happens now? I mean, I have to say that Chickasee doesn't have permission from the school to be out of school today. That's your choice to bring him out of school and bring him here. So what do you want to happen now? What do you think will happen now?
Well, at the end of the day, the main thing and the most important thing is my son's education. And for a headmaster to be sticking to this sort of policy, it is absolutely wrong.
But Tuesday, if the main thing is your son's education, you maybe could argue that then the hair has to go, the dreadlocks have to go.
No, it doesn't.
So then that's not the main thing, his education isn't the main thing.
Education is his main thing because I had other kids and they all went to school and they all got education, very good education, and they're all in very good positions at the moment.
And they all had dreadlocks.
And they all had dreadlocks.
Welcome to the Advised Show, media with the common sense approach. So that was a young man, 12 years old, going to a private Catholic school, and he was suspended for staring at a girl. Yes, suspended for staring. Let me roll the clip.
Parents of a 12-year-old Catholic boy are a little peeved. Their son was suspended from school last year for staring at another student. It happened at St. Gabriel Consolidated School in Glendale.
The perception was that he intimidated her.
Kicked out of school for staring at another student? The parents would not let their child be filmed, so I asked the mother to show me the face her kid said he made. The school says that stare was intimidating. The parents took the school to court to get the suspension erased from the record, but they lost the case. In court documents, though, the school said the discipline is consistent with the handbook and the female student felt threatened. The Tolbert son even wrote an apology letter. It reads in part, "I never knew she was scared because she was laughing. I don't want to be suspended anymore. This will be my last time intimidating anyone." The parents say they didn't know about the incident or the apology letter until 3 days after it happened. The parents told me the same student who said she was a victim did something pretty bad herself.
So the same girl that accused my son of this act of perception of intimidation aggressively poured milk on someone else's lunch. When she did that, there was no repercussions for that academic penalty. She received nothing for that.
We tried to talk to the school. They sent us a statement saying, quote, Judge Patrick Dinkelacker listened to the plaintiff's arguments yesterday, rejected them, and dismissed the complaint against the school. We aren't going to comment any further on particular issues concerning our students.
Now, most people will say this is the most ridiculous story I've ever heard in my life. You're going to suspend someone for staring. Well, you know, this really isn't odd for a black person because, you know, we remember Emmett Till. Most of you who don't know about Emmett Till, he was allegedly staring and whistling at a white woman. And what did they do to him? He was a young boy. They beat him, killed him mercilessly, just because he was looking and staring and whistling supposedly at a white woman. Recently, in 2015, we had another story of a black man who was stopped by a police officer for staring. We covered that on this channel, as you saw.
Without being in the cop car, right? You know how it is when the police pulling you over? You're like, I'm not doing nothing. Why is he, every move I make, why is he making it? I'm not doing nothing. Okay. Because I have a Michigan plate. Other than that, why was you trailing me?
Because you made direct eye contact with me and held on to it when I was passing you up Salem.
I made direct. I didn't even see you.
I'm not going to argue about it anymore, sir. If you want to keep talking about it, I'll just take your license back and give you a citation for the violation. We can take it to court. I'm not going to.
And the cop said you were staring at me. See, no one in this country knows how it feels to be a black man or a black boy. Like I stated in the previous video, we get it from all angles. We get it from the savages within our community who's choosing to commit crimes. We got to fight through that. Then we got to deal with systematic racism, discrimination. And if we say something about anything, we're complaining. We're being victims all the time. But really, how could you even look at this story and say, this is just normal behavior, staring? The boy wrote an apology letter saying he's not going to intimidate anybody anymore. I mean, as a black man, I am sick and tired of that. Every single time a black man look a certain way or a black boy, it's a problem. You know, you're intimidating me. He's threatening me. What is he thinking? What is he going to do? All this stuff and propaganda is put out by the people that's within the media or those who are raising their kids that way. But yet the ones that they aren't teaching that's going to do something to somebody, it's them little withdrawn ones in their group. And they go and do some heinous things that we see in the news all the time. But you never sit up there and put those stereotypes out there. See, this story is just wrong. Even if you're paying for a private school, and this is the thing, you can be sometime a great person, don't commit crimes, and still deal with racism. And I know what some of you going to say is, well, you were saying in a video yesterday about the savages within our community. Yeah, but I never said we was removed from racism. You could be a president, you could be a doctor, lawyer, you can be whatever, and still have to deal with racism. You could never commit crimes. You could pay your taxes. You could vote. You can do everything right, and they still would look at you that way because there are people who don't like us. There are people that feel that we shouldn't be in certain schools and stuff like that. That's why I highly support that we in the black community to get together and open up our own schools that we won't have to deal with getting suspended for staring at somebody. I mean, come on, people do that all the time. People sometimes stare off into space. They're looking your direction, but they're not really staring at you. They're probably thinking about something else. And for this girl who supposedly say she felt threatened and intimidated, that sounds like something her parents said, because the boy said she was laughing. Then the same girl poured milk on somebody intentionally and nothing happened to her. It's just straight discrimination and racism. And any black person that got their kid in that school, you need to pull them out, because I'm sorry, I would not let my kid go to that school anymore. You suspending somebody for staring. I mean, that just don't make any sense. Out of all the things you could suspend a child for, that's it. That's why the American education system just sucks in a lot of ways. You're paying attention to the wrong things, but not trying to educate these kids. Hit me up in the comments, use your commentaries, subscribe.
A sixth grader at Lawton Child's Middle Academy was arrested and taken to a juvenile detention center, charged with disrupting a school function and resisting arrest without violence. It's a decision that's not sitting well with the student's mother, Dakira Talbot, who says her son is in gifted classes and has been bullied at the school before.
I'm upset, I'm angry, I'm hurt, more so for my son. My son hasn't never been through anything like this, and I feel like they should have handled this differently.
The February 4th incident started when a substitute teacher asked the 11-year-old boy to stand up for the pledge. He reportedly told the substitute teacher the flag was racist and the national anthem was offensive to black people. In a statement to the district, the substitute teacher reported telling the 11-year-old boy why, if it was so bad here, he did not go to another place to live. She said he then said, "They brought me here." And she said she told him, well, you can always go back, because she was from Cuba and the day she felt unwelcome here, she'd find somewhere else to live.
She was wrong. She was way out of place.
The substitute teacher then wrote she called the office because she, quote, didn't want to continue dealing with him. According to the arrest affidavit, the student was arrested because he refused to follow multiple commands, repeatedly called school leaders racist, and was disruptive. They said he threatened to get the school resource officer and principal fired and to beat the teacher, an accusation he says is just not true.
I want the charges dropped, and I want the school to be held accountable and the officer for what happened, because it shouldn't have been handled the way that it was handled.
Dakira Talbot says she and her son will now head to court on February 19th to fight these two misdemeanor charges. Reporting in Lakeland, I'm Stephanie Clay-Tor, Spectrum Bay News 9.
Why did you feel the need to snatch me out of my chair? Why couldn't you just asked me to get up? I mean, I still would have said no, but it's better than snatching me out of the chair. and forcing me to stand.
Still reeling, Stone Chaney and his family are banding together against what they say happened at the start of his third day of 6th grade, when it was time to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
A teacher just comes up, puts her arms under my armpits and snatches me out of my chair. I say I don't stand for the pledge. She just glares at me and walks away. I just feel like my rights were violated. She was the teacher consultant, the person who teaches other people not to put their hands on students. So who knows what other teachers she's taught her way of thinking.
A rough start to his first year at East Middle School got even worse when he says he returned the next morning to a substitute teacher driving the point home, ordering him to stand and telling him he would need a special note to be allowed to sit.
God said, don't worship anything other than me. Don't worship any idols. And pledging to a flag would kind of be like worshiping it. It's not if I have a reason or not, it's my right.
His parents demanded action at a school board meeting. Now both teachers have been placed on administrative leave.
One of the main issues that we are having a problem with is the fact that an adult felt the need to put their hands on my child.
Very proud of my son. Very proud. He's a national hero right now.
Farmington Public Schools superintendent showing inclusion for Stone in a statement saying the district fully supports the right of each student to participate or not in the daily pledge. At Farmington Public Schools, we expect every child and adult in our district to be treated with dignity and respect. At this time, the district cannot speculate about the outcome of the pending investigation. And although Stone's family is encouraged by the district's recent action, they're focusing now on the bigger picture.
I have 3 little brothers, so if we let it get away with me, who knows what happens to the rest of them. I hope it never happens to them. Nobody in East, nobody in Michigan, nobody all over the country.
After a 5th grade lesson on slavery, a lesson that forced an African-American student to the mock auction block so white students could bid on him. 10 Investigates' Paul Aker joins us with the school's response. Paul?
That's right, Andrea. The school says only one parent was upset by this lesson, but that parent was really upset. And the student says he was humiliated by it.
Did you remember the soccer game?
At 10 years old, Nico Burton loves his dog, but he's not so fond of social studies, where yesterday he got a painful lesson in American history.
I ended up being a slave.
Nico says his teacher at Gahanna's Chapelfield Elementary divided the class and made some students slaves and others their masters.
At first I didn't really care, but after people were bidding on people, it kind of made me a little mad and stuff.
Nico says it got worse when the so-called masters were told to feel the students playing slaves to see if they were worth buying.
They got to look in your mouth and feel your legs and stuff to see if you were strong or stuff.
And people were doing that to you?
Yeah.
He felt degraded. He was hurt. Kids picked on him later.
Nico's mom, Anika, says she's astonished.
I feel like that was totally inappropriate. It was racist and degrading.
Gahanna Jefferson School District officials declined to comment on camera, but a spokeswoman claims this was part of a state-required curriculum. She tells 10 Investigates it was a one-time lesson, and in a statement she wrote, "As soon as the concern was brought to our attention, school officials acted promptly to speak with the parent. Then, while we were at Nico's house, his principal called. We overheard his apology.
I apologize for that. Definitely, I make sure that type of lesson doesn't happen.
I'm just shocked nobody has ever said anything about it.
While the family says the apology is nice, Nico says he's still waiting to hear one from his teacher.
And it was kind of mean, and she should have said sorry.
And we contacted the State Board of Education to find out what the law requires. It does call for 5th graders to have exposure to diversity education, but the law does not mention anything about mock slave auctions.
There was a sale of a black child by white children in the classroom.
Parents of 5th graders at schools in New Jersey are outraged after 2 slavery-related school assignments may have taken it too far. They say a mock slave auction was held by a substitute educator, while their regular teacher was out for a medical procedure.
You're demoralized. If you're sold on a block in 2017 in your 5th grade class, it may affect you for the rest of your life.
The issue was discussed at a recent Board of Education meeting.
I'm disgusted, really disgusted, that a child was bought. That doesn't make any sense.
A note from the principal about the project says the activity was not part of the curriculum, not part of the teacher's assignment, not condoned by the classroom teacher, and not authorized by the district. Around the same time, parents in another school district complained about a similar assignment. Students were asked to design posters replicating a slave auction. The superintendent has since sent out a letter saying we need to do a better job of acknowledging the uglier parts of our past so that children can learn the full story. Many offended parents took to Facebook saying, "I am mortified. These images actually hurt my heart. This is absolutely appalling and demeaning. We're a community built on diversity, not destructive ignorance and segregation." The public is split about the assignment.
I can see how out of context people would get angry about that. I can see it's a tough assignment.
I don't think the school should have allowed that at all.
The posters have been taken down, and the school plans to hold a town hall meeting to address concerned parents and students. For Inside
I'm getting teary-eyed about it because it's just like, how can somebody do this to my son?
Vernex Harding sat her 10-year-old son down for a tough conversation about cultural understanding. She's telling her story exclusively to Pix 11. Harding says her child was traumatized after a hands-on lesson about slavery. It felt all too real.
She told all the African-American students to raise their hands and proceeded with this exercise.
The exercise was a mock slave auction. Harding's son told her he and 2 other African Americans in their 5th grade class were brought into the hallway.
She started to put imaginary chains along our neck, our wrist, and our shackles on our ankles. And as soon as she did that, Mommy, I knew it was wrong.
When they were brought back into the classroom, they were lined up. The teacher then asked other students to start bidding to buy them.
She reiterated and said, you look like a wealthy white man. How about 300? Just started a bidding with the children.
The mock slave auction of African-American students happened Tuesday at the Chapel School in Bronxville. Parents are now livid and organizing. One sent us this email from the principal. He called the lesson racially insensitive and hurtful. A school investigation is now underway. For now, the social studies teacher who led the lesson has been removed from the classroom, and tonight, parents are being called to the school for emergency meetings. Our sources in the Attorney General's office tell us Letitia James is aware of the parents' concerns here, and the AG's office is now monitoring the school's response.
You need to take him out of public school. That's what you need to do. And I don't know what else has to happen to him or to other kids that you have to read about for you to finally do it. But you need to do it because slowly but surely the confidence will be sucked out of him because of all these little things that are going to add up that are going to happen to him, all because he's black. And that's the truth, okay? We all know in public school, a lot of the times, like I said, they just don't care. They don't care. And unfortunately, their job is really not to educate you anymore. It's to indoctrinate you. And, a lot of these public schools, they have interests in the private prisons. So they're directly doing certain things so that people can fall in line to go to prison. And if you don't know about the prison industrial complex, you need to Google that because that is real. That is alive and breathing right now, training people right now, getting them ready for prison life.
Well, we started in Africa, started in Africa, started in Africa. African in America, African in Europe.
It's the second time Jacqueline Johnson cried next to her son Kendrick's grave. The first time he was being lowered into the ground. This time he's being pulled out of it.
Did you ever expect you'd have to exhume his body?
No, I didn't expect to have to bury his body.
In June, Kendrick's body was sent to Florida. The Johnsons hired Dr. Bill Anderson to conduct an independent second autopsy. In that autopsy, Anderson told the Johnsons he'd found evidence that Kendrick died as the result of a blow to the neck and not accidental asphyxia after slipping into a rolled gym mat at school, as investigators in Georgia had said. But what Dr. Anderson did not find shocked them.
When we got the body for the second autopsy, that organs, the heart, lungs, liver, etc., were not with the body.
The brain?
The brain, they were all absent.
Every organ from the top of Kendrick's head to his pelvis gone, and his family had no idea.
We have been let down again. And when we buried Kendrick, we thought we was burying Kendrick, not half of Kendrick.
I'm not sure at this point who did not return the organs to the body, but I know when we got the body, the organs were not there.
So CNN contacted the two entities that had custody of Kendrick's body and access to his organs: the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, which conducted the first autopsy in January, and Harrington Funeral Home, which the Johnsons chose to embalm and prepare Kendrick's body for burial days later. A spokeswoman for the state tells CNN after its autopsy, the organs were placed in Johnson's body, the body was closed, then the body was released to the funeral home. State investigators say it's their normal practice, but what happened after his body arrived at the funeral home was anything but normal.
What was in the place of the organs?
Newspaper.
Newspaper.
Dr. Anderson showed me the pictures of Kendrick's body he'd taken during the second autopsy.
It's a Black Friday ad, JCPenney ad.
Yes.
Stuffing that newspaper in like it was a garbage can inside his body. It's unbelievable.
I'd imagine that that's a different kind of pain.
Yep.
Why do you think that there would be newspaper stuffed in your child?
I never heard of that before. Never.
Neither had the founder of a National Embalming Academy contacted by CNN, who said it's not consistent with the standards of care in the industry. Nor had the president of the National Association of Medical Examiners, who told CNN he's never heard of this practice.
Why would the funeral home discard his organs and stuff them with newspaper?
The question is, why did he tell us?
So what exactly did the Harrington Funeral Home do with Kendrick's organs? And why was he stuffed with old newspaper? We went to their office to find out, but their response to us? No comment. However, in a letter to the Johnsons' attorney, Harrington Funeral Home owner Antonio Harrington denies he received Kendrick's organs. He writes in part, his internal organs were destroyed through natural process and henceforth were discarded before the body was sent back to Valdosta. It's another disappointing answer for parents determined to know what happened to their son before and now after his death. And they admit they're struggling.
Unbearable, just about. Only thing that wakes you up in the morning is just to keep pushing.
Victor Blackwell joins us now. This is unbelievable. Newspaper inside this young man's body. I understand there's an investigation into where Kendrick Johnson's organs went and why. What do we know about it?
Well, Anderson, we contacted the Georgia Secretary of State's office because they issued licenses to funeral homes. We wanted to check on the history of Harrington Funeral Home. And when we told them why we were calling, they decided that they too wanted to know where are Kendrick Johnson's organs, and they wanted to know more about this process, this practice of stuffing bodies with newspaper, something that they'd never heard of either.
How was the family's autopsy doctor able to determine the cause of death then?
Yeah, I asked him, if the organs aren't there, how can you determine how Kendrick died? Well, he says that essentially blunt force trauma was not in the organs, it was in the right side jaw, which was actually noted as bruised during the paramedics report on the day he was found. He dissected the jaw, which had not been dissected in the first autopsy, found bleeding under the skin. He dissected the left side as well, did not find the bleeding, and he concluded that that bruising indicated, also with the bleeding, that there was blunt force trauma, that Kendrick took that blow to the neck.
You know, Victor, one thing I hadn't noticed, and actually a viewer who works in gyms noticed and tweeted me about this the other day, was that it looks like all the mats are rolled really tightly, except for the one that Kendrick was found in. That seems to have had a large opening.
At the Atlanta home of 19th century writer Joel Chandler Harris, best known for his Uncle Remus African-American folk tales, Akbar Imhotep is keeping alive the oral tradition that inspired Chandler's books.
Listen to the words and help them grow.
This is part of a homeschooling support network in Cobb County, Georgia, just outside Atlanta.
This is not just any old house.
It was founded in 2016 by Amber Johnston, a business owner, wife, and mother of 4. She wanted to fill a need she saw for her daughters and for a burgeoning demographic in the homeschooling movement, African Americans. Johnston's group, which began with 2 families less than 2 years ago, has grown to 66 families.
I'm still shocked about it. It reminds me when I was growing up in the 80s, there was this cartoon called Thundercats. And when they needed to be called to action, they would say, Thundercats, 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 ho! And this light would go up in the sky and the other Thundercats would see it. That's what I feel like. I feel like I put a beacon light up in the sky in Cobb County, thinking that a few sprinkles of families might see it. And I've been overwhelmed by the response.
Across the nation, as many as 202,000 Black children are being homeschooled, up from about 105,000 in 2003. While white Americans still make up a majority of the 1.7 million homeschoolers, the percentage of African Americans is growing fast. They cite some of the same reasons for abandoning traditional schools that the larger homeschooling community does: negative school environments, including peer pressure, dissatisfaction with academics, and a desire to provide religious instruction.
Our Father who art in heaven.
But it wasn't just the family's faith that made the Johnstons look for alternatives. They were worried about the quality of the schools in their area. And there was another factor that gave them pause.
I started realizing that maybe we hadn't come as far along in race relations in the country as I thought that we had, that there seemed to be a lot of messed up stuff brewing underneath. And I was feeling very much like a mama bear, like, hey, I don't know exactly what's going down here, but I'm not willing to sacrifice my child as I try to figure this out.
That was 4 years ago, and Johnston's daughters have been homeschooled ever since.
What does that mean?
If you don't work for your food, you can't get it.
The decision to home educate was strengthened in 2014 when Johnston found out she was having the first of her 2 boys. She was initially excited.
And my very second thought was, great, now I'm the mother of America's most hated. And what am I going to do with that? When I look at my little boys, I just see beauty, and the thought of putting them in an environment where one day they would be looked upon potentially and very likely as being less than, less smart, less deserving, less safe. And I just hear less.
Johnston isn't alone. Cheryl Field Smith, a professor of education at the University of Georgia, has heard from a lot of parents like Amber Johnston. In 2009, she published a study about Black homeschoolers. She found the vast majority cite perceptions of or experiences with racism in public and private schools as a reason for homeschooling.
The research shows us that we have discipline disproportionality where Black males are suspended 2 times more than their other counterparts. So that's not by accident. I think that's racism. I think that that's prejudice and assumptions that we're making about children.
Judy Sarden, who lives just outside of Atlanta, knows these kinds of assumptions all too well. Sarden and her husband, an architect, both went to public schools. She was an attorney making 6 figures when she decided to quit her job to teach her 2 kids, 10-year-old Aiden and 9-year-old Haley.
Kind of hard to imagine that person quitting their fancy corporate job and going home to be with their children.
It was 2012. Sarden says then 4-year-old Aiden had a tough year with one teacher in his Montessori class.
My son was reading at the time. He was young, but he was reading. And the other teachers had pushed him. Anything he showed an aptitude for, they had pushed him and helped him to develop it in a way that he enjoyed it. But this teacher, who had come from the public schools, didn't. And I begged her to, I sent her books to school that he was reading and asked her to encourage him and have him read to her, and she never did. There was no expectation that he should be able to read. And I could see kind of, the writing on the wall. I could see where we were going with his education, with him regressing the way he did that one year. It was drastic, and it was heartbreaking.
Keeping her kids home, Sardin says she is able to shape their curriculum. That includes history lessons they won't get in public school.
Depending on what state you're in, you learn about African enslavement in the Americas, or you don't learn about it at all. And basically, that is the history that all kids, black and white, learn about black people.
With her kids, she teaches a different way.
So we don't just learn about the Greek and Roman empires. We learn about the African civilizations. We learn about what's going on in the Americas. We get to learn about what's going on pretty much on every continent throughout history. So that by the time we get to modern times and we get to African enslavement in the Americas, we've studied 4,000 or 5,000 years of world history, but especially African history. So that for my children, their history didn't just start 300 years ago here in the Americas. Their history started back in Africa.
We go hard on African American history and culture, and again, that's a reflection of just what I didn't know. I didn't know much about Africa. I thought Africa was a country,
Retired Air Force veteran Shiva Quinn lives in rural Byron, Georgia. She has been homeschooling her two daughters, 7-year-old Zariah and 6-year-old Anaya, for the past 4 years.
So 6 times 5 is what? 30. Okay.
Like Judy Sardin, Quinn emphasizes African American history and has added a personal touch, tracing her family's DNA to Ghana. And she's doing it on her own as a single mother.
Being a single parent is not easy on nobody. I'm not gonna lie. My day starts at 3 o'clock in the morning. I've been up since 3 o'clock this morning, getting breakfast going, getting lunch on, because you can't afford to eat out every day. Like, who does that, right? So you have to be more engaged with your family.
Homeschooling can be costly. Like private school families, homeschoolers still must pay the local taxes that pay for public school, even though their kids are not enrolled. The cost of educational content can run into the hundreds, and funds for teaching tools like tablets and these programmable robots come directly out of parents' pockets. But with access to low-cost or free online lessons, Quinn says being a homeschooling single mom is possible. A combination of her Air Force pension, a job teaching a few online classes, and financial contributions from her ex-husband allows Quinn to stay at home. She decided to homeschool when teachers refused her request to give her then 4-year-old daughter advanced reading material. The decision was very much grounded in her family history.
I come from a family of illiteracy, and I wanted my kids to really know how to read well. And that was the whole, thing of it behind me when I say the schools wouldn't, push them. I'm like, I know they can do more. I know they can do better, but we're just gonna do this and we're not gonna do any more. And I'm like, no, like why she can't practice her sight words over the weekend, or why we can't read these books, or, why we had to just stop at this level. And when I found out that the teachers just were not working with me and trying to help me move my children forward, I was like, this is not gonna work.
Professor Field Smith points to studies suggesting Shiva Quinn's experience is not unique. African American parents can face more resistance from schools than white parents when advocating for their children.
A lot of homeschoolers have had experiences in schools where the parents have tried to advocate for their children and they've experienced marginalization, and their child has experienced just not being able to be themselves. They're painted as troublemakers.
And being able to be yourself and embrace Black culture, says Amber Johnston, is part of what her homeschooling group is all about.
Sometimes, doggone it, we just want to go to Alvin Ailey and put on some Nina Simone and come home and just talk about stuff. And that's what we're able to do. So it's not against anyone as much as it is a support. And I really see it as a mental health system for our kids.
But not everyone sees it that way, she says. On social media, she's received some painful comments, particularly from those outside her Black community.
You're basically teaching racism to your kids, or your group is an example of reverse racism. And so I wish, that I could sometimes say, I wish you could walk in my shoes, because I know you're a passionate mother. And I know that if your little girl was heartbroken, you would start any kind of group you could to help her.
Investigation continues into the circumstances that led to a 5-year-old girl being handcuffed by police in Florida. St. Petersburg police were called to the Fairmount Park Elementary School after a little girl threw a temper tantrum. Well, the girl's mother says, there you can see the deputies coming in to handcuff her. The girl's mother says that handcuffing was incomprehensible, while school officials say they weren't left with many options. Joining us from Los Angeles is Dr. Harvey Karp, author of several books on child behavior, including Happiest Toddler on the Block, also available on DVD. Dr. Karp, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You just heard the school officials there saying that this child's mother gave the school strict instructions not to touch her child. So what are school officials supposed to do with someone who has a temper tantrum that lasts this long?
Well, school officials never are supposed to touch kids unless you have to do it to protect their safety or to keep them from being disruptive. And I think that they did a good job in this case, actually. They really only touched her when she was climbing up on top of the table or when she was hitting at them. There are 3 steps to deal with any very disruptive behavior, and these school officials did a couple of them well, and one of them I think they could have done better. The 3 steps are to stop the disruptive behavior, the second is engage emotionally, and the third is to rebuild the rapport. Now, they stopped the behavior, they took her out of the room, they isolated her, they wouldn't let her do dangerous things. I think in terms of engaging emotionally, they could have done a better job to emotionally respond to her, to let her know that they see it from her point of view, rather than just standing over her and saying that's unacceptable behavior, which is hard for a 5-year-old to understand. They could have empathized more and gone, that was really hard, you didn't like that, that made you so upset. Now, I'm not saying you allow bad behavior, but you at least let them know that you see it from their perspective as well. And the third thing which they did well is to start rebuilding rapport. And that's when they sat her down and they start putting the paper back in the garbage can, or they walk her to the next room. And when she cooperated, they praised her. They said, you made an excellent choice. And I think that was good on their part.
Only on 7 tonight, a mother outraged over her son's arrest at a Detroit school. The teen who has autism allegedly pulled the fire alarm before school police handcuffed him. Even a district spokesperson tells us they do have concerns over how it was handled. 7 Action News reporter Kimberly Craig talked to the teen's mom.
Angela Miller says her 13-year-old son has high-functioning autism, and she says the last thing he needed was to be arrested at school.
I said they put him in what? Handcuffs? No.
Angela Miller couldn't believe what she was hearing. She says her son, who was in the 6th grade here at Thurkel Elementary, was arrested by Detroit Public Schools police and then taken to their station. She says the first person who called her was a police officer.
Well, ma'am, you need to come and pick your son up. I'm like, well, why is he there? Well, he caused a false alarm at school. I'm like, well, what are you talking about? He pulled a fire alarm. I was like, huh?
Angela says she finds it hard to believe that her son would pull a fire alarm because he doesn't like loud noises. And she said her daughter, who was in the same school, told her she didn't hear anything, though we're told it may not ring loudly throughout the school. But Angela said the resource room teacher was supposed to be with her son if his paraprofessional was at lunch. And whatever happened, she said to arrest him and place him in handcuffs was unnecessary. And she says she should have been called so she could talk to her son like she has in other situations.
He's high-functioning autistic, and he does have a history of eloping from the school and tearing bulletin boards down and things of that nature. But at the same time, that's no reason to be tired of him and want him to be arrested.
We reached out to the school district, and a spokesperson confirms Jarrell was arrested because they say he sounded a false alarm, and that's a crime. They said his mother was issued a citation according to district protocol, and they are reviewing the arrest.
They're uneducated, and they don't know how to deal with children on any spectrum of autism.
And if her son is ready to come back to school on Monday, Angela says she wants to sit down and talk to the principal to make sure this doesn't happen again. In Detroit, Kimberly Craig, 7 Action News.
All right, thank you so much, Kim.
America's public schools are failing students in multiple ways.
One of the most disruptive is the process by which students are funneled out of the public school system and into the juvenile justice system. It's called the school-to-prison pipeline, and there is increasing evidence that it starts as early as preschool. The school-to-prison pipeline primarily victimizes Black students, trapping them in a cycle of discipline and incarceration, according to Dr. Kenneth D. Waters, diversity educator and researcher.
I want to believe that every student wants to overcome the societal predictions of what's placed on them because of their race, sex, and the socioeconomic status.
Increasingly, schools are cracking down on small offenses, such as cutting class or being disrespectful. This is supposed to discourage more serious infractions, like drug or weapons possession. But what constitutes disobedience or disrespect can be very subjective. A study in Texas found that 97% of the state's suspensions were for subjective reasons, made at the discretion of school administrators. And Black students were 31% more likely to receive discretionary suspensions than white students.
It obviously affects the individual who is actually entering the penal system, but you're affecting communities, you're affecting the economy, you're affecting families, you're affecting school systems.
The disparity can start as early as preschool, when 48% of preschoolers who are suspended more than once are Black. Black students are 3 times more likely to be suspended or expelled than their white counterparts. And Black girls are suspended at higher rates than girls of any other race.
I want to believe every student is destined for success. They want to achieve, but more times now, we can't control certain things that happen in their homes. I had a student years ago, by the time they got to school, they said, hey, I walked through a crack house facility, prostitution. When I get here, I walk through a metal detector and people bother me. And I haven't eaten since lunch yesterday. And you're asking me to sit here in class and learn? There's a challenge.
When students are kept out of school as punishment, they miss lessons and assignments and fall behind academically. They are also more likely to be disciplined again, which can lead to further problems. The Texas study found that students who had been suspended or expelled were twice as likely to drop out. Adding to the problem, police officers stationed inside schools to prevent serious crimes. When these officers react overzealously to minor infractions, they make small problems worse. Schools with officers have 5 times as many arrests for disorderly conduct as schools without them. But there are solutions.
We need more of our educators to take a genuine interest in the whole student as opposed to what they want to teach on a board and so forth. Do not be quick to actually discipline them, but be more mindful of the predicament they may be coming from and have an understanding of why they're doing what they're doing. Now, I'm not saying take away the discipline, but as you're adding that disciplinary act or that consequence, you're explaining, why am I doing this? You're explaining the reason I am disciplining you is because this happened, and this is how you can fix this down the line. I'm showing a genuine interest of actually being restorative and helping you and moving forward so this won't happen again and be repeated.
There are also proactive solutions, including hiring school guidance counselors instead of more police officers. Experts like Kenneth say the best way to prevent incarceration is to provide more equal educational opportunities and to create environments that support all students.